Good afternoon everyone and welcome to this meeting of the Glenorchy City Council on Monday 27th of February 2023. I'm Beck Thomas, Mayor of Glenorchy and Chairperson of this afternoon's Council meeting. I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country. The City of Glenorchy acknowledges the Palawa people as the original and traditional owners of this land on which we meet this afternoon, the current inhabitants, the traditional owners and custodians of this land. We recognise and cherish the value of continuing Aboriginal knowledge and cultural practice and acknowledge and respect the Tasmanian Aboriginal people. Joining me here in Council Chambers this afternoon is Deputy Mayor Sue Hickey, Alderman Jan Dunsby, Councillor Harry Quick, Councillor Molly Kendall, Alderman Russell Yaxley, Alderman Josh Cockshut, Alderman Stuart Slade, Alderman Stephen King and Council's General Manager Tony McMullen. We also have a number of Council staff joining us this afternoon in Chambers, and we welcome members of the public who are joining us here this afternoon and also online via our live streams. I will just note, given we have a few members of the public here today, we have just opened upstairs, so if any members of the public or staff would like to move upstairs, like to and are able to, there is some space up there for viewing as well. Before we open our agenda, I take this opportunity to make a statement about workplace health and safety. Glenorchy City Council takes workplace health and safety seriously, and this includes physical and psychological safety. We have a duty to ensure that a safe workplace is provided for our employees, elected members, contractors, volunteers, and members of the public who are present at Council's workplaces. Council meetings form part of Council's workplace, and it's expected that everyone who attends Council meetings will behave in a polite and respectful manner. Council has endorsed a statement of intent setting out how we as aldermen and councillors have agreed to conduct ourselves in representing the people of Glenorchy. In accordance with this, any disagreement should be expressed respectfully, remembering both during debate and in decision making that we are elected to represent and serve the people of Glenorchy and to make our city the best it can be. We have 21 items on our agenda this afternoon, and agenda item 1 is apologies. We have no apologies this afternoon. Agenda item 2 is confirmation of the minutes of the open meeting, and I ask for a motion that the minutes of the council meeting held on 30th of January 2023 be confirmed. Moved Alderman Slade, someone to second. Alderman Dunsby. Any discussion of the minutes, Alderman Slade?
No, I've got none.
Any further discussion of the minutes? I will put the motion to the vote if you're happy with that, Alderman Slade. I'll put the motion. Please raise your hand if you're for. That's carried unanimously. Agenda item 3 is announcements by the Chair. I have none this afternoon. However, I would seek a motion that we reorder the agenda to swap around items 20 and 21. If I have someone to move that motion.
Yeah, I was going to push that anyway.
Thank you. Moved Alderman King. Someone to second. Councillor Kendall. Thank you. Any discussion?
No, it just makes sense.
No, I will put the motion. Please raise your hand if you're for. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 4 is pecuniary interest notifications. Are there any aldermen, councillors or staff with any interest on this afternoon's agenda? General Manager.
Mayor, I declare an interest in item 20, General Manager's mid-year performance review 22-23.
Thank you, General Manager. That is noted for the minutes. Agenda item, any other interests? Sorry. Nope. Moving on then to agenda item 5, response to previous public questions taken on notice, and there are none this afternoon. Agenda item 6 is public question time. We have 15 minutes we allow for public question time, and I note some of the rules here this afternoon. The council meeting is a formal meeting of the aldermen and councillors elected by the Glenorchy community. Public question time is an opportunity in this formal meeting for members of the public to ask questions of your elected members about the matters that affect ratepayers and citizens. Question time is for asking questions, not making statements, although brief explanations of the background or context may be given, but comments or statements about council's activities are otherwise not permitted. I may permit follow-up questions at my discretion, but answers to questions are not to be debated with council. I also may refuse to answer a question or direct someone to stop speaking if I decide the question is not appropriate or in accordance with these rules. I do have discretion to extend public question time if necessary. So we have 15 minutes for public question time, and I will note before that we have received a number of questions on notice, so I'll just note those. For members of the public present with us and viewing online this afternoon, we had a question on notice from Mr. Eddie Steenbergen. in relation to Glenorchy city status, and a series of questions in relation to the powers and any income or benefits that Glenorchy receives from the city status, and brief answers included in the agenda there. Question on notice from Mr Morris Malone of West Moona in relation to how Council investigates suspected breaches to the Dog Control Act 2000 with respect to the prohibitions on use provided for in the Listening Devices Act 1991. And again, there's a very comprehensive answer included in our agenda papers. He also asked when the amount of rainfall experienced is greater than a 2% annual exceedance probability event, the capacity of stormwater systems that have been the standard for local government are exceeded. What assistance does Council provide residents whose properties are affected in any such instance, and what long-term measures are being considered for remedy? Again, the answer is included in our agenda papers there. Question on notice from Ms Leanne Golding of Claremont asking if Glenorchy Council will start a curbside hard waste collection like some other councils have available. We had a similar question on notice from Ms Samantha Mallison of Glenorchy and also Ms Andrea Cousins of Claremont. So similar answers to all of those three questions are included in the agenda papers. Ms Mallison also asked why doesn't Glenorchy have a weekly collection of general waste rubbish, and the answer again is included in our agenda papers there. Finally, a question on notice from Mr Phil Brook of Berridale in regards to the signs recently installed reinforcing that dogs and bikes are not permitted on the Montrose Foreshore Gasp boardwalk, and asking what's the penalty and how many people have been cautioned and prosecuted over the last 4 years. Once again, the answers are included in our agenda. I won't read them out because there are so many. We'll be here all night, but please, if you are interested, have a read in the papers available online. So 15 minutes for public question time. Do any members of the public present this afternoon have a question, Council? Sure, if you'd just like to come forward to the table, please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Irene Klapsis. I currently live at 12 Croom Court, Berridale. I suppose I'm here today as in a matter of 8 months, I have a home business that has been flooded twice in 8 months, and it's a concern because that's my home and my income for my children, and I just wanted to know if anything, or if it's been looked at, has been done with the flooding situation that has been happening in Berridale at the moment.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms Klapsis, for your question of coming along this afternoon. I understand from discussions with the General Manager and Director of Infrastructure and Works today that Council certainly is looking into this issue and has been over the past 8 months, I think you described, since the first incident occurred. But I might defer, if I may, through you, General Manager, to Director Emilio Reale, as he's the expert on this matter, so he will be able to answer your question better than me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I wouldn't say expert because we still are investigating some of the cause of the flooding. It was a pretty intense rainfall event, and a lot of water has passed over land, not got into the stormwater system. We have got a number of projects already planned to roll out, and some of them are happening now, which is a result of what we found from the event 8 months ago. We've yet to upgrade the inlet pipe at the top of the system up in top of Dooley's Avenue. We're actually going to expand the capacity of that pipe. Down in Chandos Drive, we're actually looking at increasing the size of the pits and connecting a extension to try and get the water into the system and to flow faster. We're expanding the number of pits that we have in that area, and we're actually going to put in double pits at the top of Dooley's Avenue. So we've got a number of things planned, and that's not saying that's the end of it, because as we have more events and we actually can do more modelling and find out what is causing some of the problems, and we'll try and put mitigation actions in place. So we are working on it.
Thank you. Do you have any follow-up questions?
So in this instance, I suppose my concern is with my insurance company, moving forward, this being the second time having to claim whether they're going to continue insuring me for this. I've just spent $20,000 on ag drains to try and prevent this from happening again. I suppose I'm in that situation. Where do I go with my business? And the wages that I'm losing, that's where my concern is in how long this is going to take to fix. I know you said it's hard to pinpoint exactly what's happening or where it's coming from. I suppose in my concern, it's a matter of how long will it take to be fixed.
Through there, the works that we have planned, there's quite a batch of that works will be completed this financial year. The expansion of the pipes at the top of the system is planned for next financial year, so we're talking July-ish. One of the issues is the catchment, so we can't always tell where the rain is going to go, and it appears that the catchment may have changed where the water flow is going. So if the water cuts in a new channel somewhere else and it misses the intake, it will flow over land. So we've actually had engineers up in the top of Dooley's Avenue today looking at what's going on in that bushland area to see if the water is flowing outside of the channels that are up there, and it may mean that we have to look at possible cutting some new ones in. But that will come once we upsize that inlet to try and get as much water in the system as possible.
Is there an engineer or someone for people who is continually flooding in the same areas at the same time that it's happening to come and have a look at the situation to let us know, okay, well, if you could do something like this, this might help the situation in that sense?
Through you, Mayor, we had a suggestion that we ought to do some information flyers to keep people posted on what we're doing, and we actually think that's a good idea so that people are aware, and we'll have a contact number on that flyer so that if any feedback you can give us, it actually helps us improve the system as much as possible.
Yeah.
I will qualify that, Mayor, in saying that we're getting more higher intensity rainfalls than we have in the past. The system is built to a certain capacity. If the rainfall exceeds that capacity, it's got to go somewhere. So we're trying to mitigate that going over people's properties, but we can't guarantee that we can stem that flow altogether. We'll do what we can to reduce it as much as possible.
That answers your question. So I think in summary, if I may, Council is working as hard as we can to try and identify, as the Director said, why the water seems to be missing the stormwater catchment, and that really is key to trying to resolve the issue, because at the moment, whether the drains are big enough or not isn't really the issue. It's the water's not hitting the stormwater drain, so why is it coming over land?
Yeah.
Will be key to solving the problem, and we're doing what we can to try and investigate that with engineers up there, but we're yet to have an answer for that issue.
Yeah.
But totally empathise with your situation. I'm sorry it's happened, to hear that it's happened twice in 2 years. I hope you can work with your insurer through this next stage.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any further questions from members of the public? Yes, sir, come forward if you wouldn't mind. Thank you.
Thank you. We're in Glenorchy on the corner of a cul-de-sac. It's really hard to come from the top of Berrydale Road, and we've been severely flooded twice. The first time was really 8 months, same as the lady. And it seems to me at the top of Berrydale Road, the stormwater is not adequately only wide enough and big enough to take the volume of water. So it just overflows into our 1, 2, 3 places on the way down to Glenorchy by about halfway into the cul-de-sac. I just don't think the volume of water is taken into the stormwater drains
The
adequate?
drains.
They could be
And the
made
guttering
bigger.
is not helping it.
So sorry, I just focus on, you can have your moment in a moment. I'm sorry, sir, can I just get your name for the record?
P-O-W-E?
P-O-W-E?
W-E?
Yeah. Thank you, Philip. Mr. Powell. So I guess your question is, are the stormwater drains big enough to take the volume of
Certainly not.
water? That's your question. I just might ask, because this is question time, so I need to frame it as a question. I ask the director to answer in response.
Thank you, Mayor. So I guess we talked about the stormwater inlets,
Yes.
that is on the program for this year there. We're actually installing some new ones. We're doing double entry ones to try and get the water into the system.
Good.
So that has been identified, and I think that was from the feedback we received from the last event as well.
Okay.
And we're also looking at, even on a temporary, as a temporary measure, some berms or like sandbags that we can put around to try and stop water jumping over the back of curves. So we're looking at some.
We understand the volume of water is unbelievable, but it's certainly not adequate
It's
to take
case
that.
of bits have been put in by the
Yeah,
council.
the walk through there to the stop.
It's
just
in
over the
bits
top of
so
it.
that you can drive
You
forward
probably
to see traffic, and it comes, we've got photos, it comes right over the drain, and they've been there 40 years and never had this until twice in 8 months. So they've just moved back into their home, only the whole house is ruined again.
Through you now. I saw you moving the around.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry for
Yeah.
that.
And we-
Mayor, if I could get those photos, that would be helpful, because that does help us with our
So-
modelling.
It's a new, you can watch the water, it's actually diverting differently because of those new bits that have been put there. And I see why they'll put there, it certainly makes coming out better to view traffic, but it's actually right over the drain.
Our,
Whatever you call them.
our civil engineer actually identified that today, and is investigating that to see if it's part of the issue.
Because sticks got caught in there, and the last time when we spoke to council, the first time they were getting stuck in that gap. And I've got photos of the water of that event,
Yeah,
and it was unreal. Yeah,
good luck with that.
yeah, sure.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Powell.
Thank you.
Any further questions from members of the public? Shaw, would you like to come forward? Thank you.
I live 2 doors up from Philip, so what goes through our place goes into his place. Unfortunately, we don't do it on purpose,
So
but
you're from Calanda Crescent?
Calanda, yeah, 44 Calanda Crescent, Angela Kisfarley. Well, I've actually had 3 incidents in the last under 12 months because somebody further up's pool burst, and I've got photos of exactly where that bark chip and everything went, which was down on the other side of, what is it, Dooley's? Dooley's. Yeah, and cut across and then came straight through our place. We actually had bark chip on our side of the fence, and there was water had got through and dug out a bit of a retaining wall. So yesterday, Saturday's incident has now collapsed all one corner of that wall. We had mud 2 steps up at the back door again. This wasn't quite as bad as the first time back in May. We had no fences, the retaining wall had been damaged. We had $380 carpet flooded. We had $100,000 car sitting in the shed in mud, my husband's tools, you name it. And it didn't quite happen this time, but that's 3 times in under 12 months. And it's, no way is that guttering. I was talking to 2 of the guys today, my husband and I've been up there today. And they are going to do that, which is a help, but it's still not fixing the problem.
So sorry, Ms. Kisfarley, was it?
Kisfarley.
Kisfarley, sorry, Ms. Kisfarley. Do you have, thank you. Do you have a specific question you'd like to put to council?
Well, what else can they do? I gather there's an issue up Geordie's Avenue, the old riverbed. I mean, we built the house there. We've been inundated with water before, but not like this last year. Not with the damage and everything. my family's lived in the area for many generations. Nobody's sort of seen the way it's coming. Like it's literally coming down Dawley's, crossing across, coming through our place. So number one, the guttering is an issue because these 3 incidents have happened since the new guttering was there, and it looks nice and it's easy to get in and out, but it's the the top of our place, it's missing that entirely, missing the drain. And it wasn't blocked. My husband went up there in the dark with a torch early hours on Saturday night or Sunday morning and to check that it wasn't blocked, and it wasn't, whereas last time it was full of rock from up in the creek. So what else can be done? Like the guys that I was talking to today suggested a bit of a retaining wall of some sort, but it's only going to move it down further. Like it's going to get into the narrowest part.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we're on the left-hand side of Calanda Crescent, and right-hand side of Calanda Crescent doesn't get any issue at all. So,
Yeah.
you know.
Thank you again. I'm sorry to hear about the situations you've experienced over the last 12
My
months, I
husband
think you said.
spent 6 weeks just cleaning up. Couldn't work, couldn't do anything 6 weeks straight, and if we'd have waited for people to come and do it, a friend of mine's mother is down the other end of Berridale, Mary's Hope Road, and she's still not in her house.
Yeah.
From May.
I think in terms of answering your question about what more can council do, you've heard our director this afternoon say that we are doing as much as we possibly can.
Well,
So it's always subject to understand the
Yes.
urgency when these rainfall events appear to be becoming more regular, but we can't predict them. You know,
No,
this
I
is the challenge, and we can't predict where they might occur either. So whilst your area has been hit now, there are other stormwater drains across the municipality that
Yes.
could also be affected down the track. So it's a matter of how do we try and predict, you know, and model as best we can. And I might just, if you wouldn't mind read the answer to the question that Mr. Malone answered, but just for the benefit of the public in relation to rainfall events. So the design standard for council stormwater assets in Tasmania is a 5% annual exceedance probability, so on the average once in every 20 years. So it's the design standard's based on expected significant rainfall events occurring once every 20 years. Obviously, we're seeing more often than that now. Some older council infrastructure that predates the time that the 5% annual exceedance probability standard was adopted doesn't meet this standard given the age of some of our stormwater assets. New stormwater infrastructure constructed as part of subdivisions or council renewal projects, so when we are renewing the stormwater infrastructure, go through a more detailed modelling process based on the changing climate impacts to understand the upstream and downstream effects when designing and determining pipe sizes and system capacity. Council is not liable for the problems arising from stormwater capacity issues that were installed prior to any standard being adopted. Properties that are damaged from flood events due to retrospective standards need to contact your insurance provider for repairs or assistance, as I'm sure you're aware. If the insurance provider deems that council may be at fault due to possible lack of maintenance of the system, then they will make a claim against council on your behalf. Council can provide a limited number of sandbags to affected residents during predicted flood events, as the director also alluded to earlier. So whilst we totally empathise with the situation and we are looking into what we can do in that particular area, it's not something that we can fix overnight because, as you heard the director say, we can't at the moment we don't actually understand the problem why it's missing the stormwater infrastructure that's there. So it's until we have this expert advice we need to properly understand.
Well, there's a
we
great
can't
big
commit.
drain on the other side of the road that all this water completely misses. Like it's been built up to the footpath and whatever, so it doesn't even go that way. No, it doesn't go anywhere near that drain. It's a great big one that's not long been renovated over the other side of Mary's Hope Road, on the corner, opposite corner. But they're old ones on our side, and we looked at, with the guy that was around today, we looked at the size of the ones up Geordie's Avenue. They're way bigger than what we've got. So, I mean, that's got to help, but he was...
So they're the ones that we're looking at extending the system into to try and take the capacity off that system.
But the way it is with the guttering at the moment, it sort of just totally misses the drain like it is. And the other side guttering sort of sends it across. I can show you on the photos from when the bark chip, when it shows you exactly how the water just goes that way across the intersection and through our fence.
Okay.
Where the new curve is.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms Casale. I will note we
Thank
have
you.
exceeded our public question time. I am happy to extend if members of the public have any further specific targeted questions. However, I do remind you of the rules that this is question time, not time for discussion or debate with council or council officers. You certainly have the opportunity to discuss these issues further with our director outside of a council meeting, and I'm sure he will avail you of that opportunity at another time. But if anyone has any unrelated questions, yes, sir, please come forward.
Howdy, my name's Phil Brook. I'm part of this issue with the water situation at Cream Court, and I'd just like to put on record that I will make a formal notice in writing to council on the situation.
Absolutely, Mr Brook. I'm happy to note that. Did you have a question?
No, that's all I've got to say. I have a question, but I'll do it formally.
Okay, no problem. Look forward to it. Any questions, not statements, questions, sure, come forward.
So I'm the reassurance that we have. So I'm Jeanette Good. So I'm the parents of Margaret and Phil Powell at Calander Crescent. So my question is that one of the problems is that we've got a lot of mud. The first time we had all the mud come down, we couldn't even get in through any of the doorways. Their whole house was a metre high in mud. So the insurance companies don't seem to deal with this. So we had to do it ourselves, and they're in their 80s. My question is, it's happened again. We believe that it's this new addition to the drain at the top that's blocking. Can we get any help from the council? We don't have, we can't physically remove this mud and gravel ourselves. Can we get any help? Can they get any help from the council in doing that?
I'll have to take that one on notice.
Yeah, thank
Ms.
you.
Good, and come back to you.
Thank
on
you.
that one.
Yep.
Thank you. Question? Sure.
I'm Sanya. I'm staying in 42 Glenorchy Crescent between Angela and Philip's house.
Sorry, just can you state your name again?
Saranya.
Selenia.
Saranya.
Saranya.
Sara. Saranya. Yeah. So I'm staying from second house from the Mary Hope Road next to the Angela Down house. So last time and this time happened the soil erosion, like what Philip's daughter mentioned. The soil is clogging the filtration part of the storm water where it is entering. It is in our house side and another one in our driveway. So the overflowing of the water, it's mostly diverting and entering to the Philip's house. So last time we fixed it, but again this time the soil erosion happened. My question is, if the council can give advice, so how to prevent the soil erosion, like what kind of any cement concretes or some stones can put it to prevent the soil erosion and to prevent the clogging. I know your team is establishing the drainage in the future days, but the prevention measure, could you give advice in the spot and engineers come to visit the area, and what we can make a next step to prevent the soil erosion or soil clogging in the system?
Are you talking about advice for individual property owners on
Yeah,
private
because
property?
again and
or-
again, the soil erosion is happening from the
Sure.
overflowing of the water. If I will show the photo to the people who want to see, so that is clogging the drain. So the overflow going to the next place, which is our Philip's house. So it is overflowing, breaking the fence and everything happening.
So my understanding is, as a matter of course, council doesn't provide advice to independent property owners about private property matters. You would need to seek your own independent engineering advice at your cost
Okay.
for that, because you can imagine the cost to council if we provided it to every ratepayer who asked for it, it would come at a significant cost to ratepayers. But I might just defer to the director, or through you, General Manager, to confirm that.
Thank you, Mayor. That's correct. We don't provide advice to individual property owners, but we could probably come and have a look and see what the issues are, whether we can provide advice on how to prevent it, or if we continue to try and prevent the flooding issues in the first place, it might actually stop what's going on.
Yeah,
So, it might be that sort of cycle that we'll look at, trying to work on fixing the overall problem rather than individual after effects.
So again, the same thing what she mentioned, like the drainage, stormwater drainage is definitely clogged with the soils. The scene, whatever we had seen, we clean up that, but the total drainage, the long ways, we could not see. If the council can help in the matter of with pressurized some systems can help to clean up the drains to prevent in the future, and to making the flow to be a bit easier. rather than with slowly it's draining. Maybe we can make it easier.
Through your mayor, just clarifications, are you talking about
The
the
stormwater
council
drainage.
stormwater system?
Yes, yeah, because it's already clogged first time. We cleaned up the bits and pieces which is in our areas, but we don't know the long ways which is running way. So the council can look at it. Is it a good way of draining happening or?
Yeah, through your mayor, we'll actually inspect the system as part of the overall process as well.
Thank you, Director. Thank you. Any further questions from members of the public this afternoon? Okay. Thank you. We will move on then to item 7, petitions or deputations to address a council meeting. Are there any, General Manager? None. Thank you. Item 8 is activities of the Mayor, and we have a recommendation that Council receive the report about the activities of myself during the period Monday 23rd of January to Sunday 19th of February. Do I have someone to move this as a motion, please? Moved, Alderman Cockshut. Someone to second, Alderman Slade. Alderman Cockshut, any discussion?
No real discussion, Mayor. Looks like you've been really busy again in January. Great way to start the year. I do have one question. Tuesday the 31st of January, met with AFL Tasmania. Just wondering if you could open up as to what that meeting was about.
Sure. So AFL Tasmania came to meet with Council to talk about the situation at Glenorchy Football Club and to discuss some of the support that they were seeking to provide to the Glenorchy Football Club and any ask, I guess, about Council's relationship with the club and any support that perhaps we could provide to the football club during this time of hardship that they are experiencing.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Alderman Dunsby.
Thank you. On the 3rd of February, we met with the chairperson of Homes Tasmania. Just wondering what the context of that may have been.
Yes, thank you. So the new chairperson of Homes Tasmania is Michelle Adair, and she has been appointed. She's from Wollongong, actually, New South Wales, and she was down and it had been suggested to her that she may want to meet with some of the councils just to hear from a council perspective on the housing situation and how Homes Tasmania may be able to learn and support councils, I guess, in this common quest we have to try and contribute to addressing the housing crisis. So the General Manager and I met with Michelle and had quite a good conversation, and the General Manager was able to provide her with quite a bit of historical context as well about land use planning and how the system works here in Tasmania to really help her knowledge of what she's coming into to work with. Is there anything you'd add, General Manager?
I think we provided Michelle with our statement of commitment on housing, and we also referred her on to a developer of a large development to put them in contact so that they could perhaps talk about the potential for affordable housing in that development.
Fantastic.
Thank you, General Manager. Any further discussion? Councillor Kendall.
Doing well. I was curious about the Hobart Airport COO and CEO meeting.
Yeah, thank you. My understanding is the CEO and COO of the Hobart Airport are meeting with a few local representatives to talk about some of the transformation projects that are going on at the airport and the runway, the international runway project that they are working on, and there's links obviously with some of the City Deal projects associated with the developments that are happening and I'd like to see happen at the airport, and links to the port upgrade projects that are proposed through the City Deal as well. So it's really a meet and greet, if you like, and just to hear about some of the priorities and how they align with some of the broader priorities for Greater Hobart. Any further discussion? No, go back to the mover. Alderman Cockshut.
All good, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, I'll put the motion. Please raise your hand if you're for. That's carried unanimously. Moving on to item 9, feedback from the investigation into the potential disposal of 23A Norman Circle, Glenorchy. And we have a recommendation that Council form an intention under Section 178 of the Local Government Act 1993 to dispose of 23A Norman Circle, Glenorchy. 2, authorise the General Manager to take all actions necessary to complete the public notification of Council's intent to sell the land in accordance with Section 178 of the Act and Council's disposal of Council land policy. And 3, authorise the General Manager to consider and acknowledge any objection received pursuant to Section 1786 of the Act and report to a future Council meeting. Do I have someone to move that? Deputy Mayor, someone to second. Alderman King, Deputy Mayor, over to you.
I think this is a good proposal and I think, you know, we are under an obligation to identify any surplus land we can that could be used for a higher use. And this is just, it's not even used as a park, it's just an area that requires maintenance by the council at the moment as an overhead. It's always lovely to have as much green space as possible, but this is a random space sort of that isn't being, as I say, turned into even a dog park or a beautifully treed outlier area. But its highest priority would be for housing because it's close to services, and that's the critical thing I think that's very much needed in our community. I'm going to have my usual grizzle about our community survey and why bother. You know, it is the most nonsensical thing to have a pie chart that says we got feedback from 10 people, 6 like it and 4 don't, and some don't even respond to all the other little questions in relation to it. I mean, I can understand if we had 200 responses or feedback. I did note somewhere in there that we had letterboxed, I think, which is obviously I would support that and say that's very appropriate. It's disheartening that making a decision to unload council land that clearly is very suitable for housing has so many steps that have to be gone through, which means this is not the blame of the council, this is the planning system as well. It just makes it very hard to get on with building the houses that are so desperately needed for this generation and generations to come. So I think it's a good report, apart from, as I say, dodgy data at the beginning. I still believe the process it has rigour and has stood up, and let's get on with the next part of it as soon as we possibly can.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any further discussion? No, I too would like to speak to the motion and appreciate the efforts of council officers in putting this report to us and the initial process that we've gone to try, as we might, to engage the community in what is a very important issue, the disposal of land that the ratepayers of Glenorchy own. It's really important that we do provide that opportunity to the community, but we can't control how many people engage in that process. So whilst there's not much data there, it is valid and reliable, but just not comprehensive in volume, I guess. That this next process we go through, so whilst we make this resolution this afternoon, there is still opportunity for members of the public to have a say. So we go through quite an onerous process because it is such an important and significant decision to make to dispose of ratepayer-owned land. So we've been through the initial consultation process to get an idea of what the community feels about it, if there's much interest or not. And then this next stage is the formal process that is required under the Local Government Act, under section 178. So it is the Local Government Act and that particular requirement that makes the process onerous, and that's certainly something the General Manager and I did raise with the new chairperson of Homes Tasmania when we met with her recently, was that this does slow down the process where we see that there's land available. Whilst we recognise the importance of community consultation when we're making these significant decisions, it can slow down the development of or supply of housing. I just have a question, if I may, about the actual recommendation now. I read it again. And General Manager, I take your advice on this. So recommendation 2 is that we authorise the General Manager to take all actions necessary to complete the public notification of Council's intent to sell the land. Whereas in recommendation 1, we talk about to dispose of the land. And I know under the Act, disposing of can be by way of sale, lease, exchange or donation. So is that binding us to sell if we were to go through the process and then get a proposal to lease? Should that be to dispose rather than sell?
Mayor, I think the intention is to sell in this case, but you're right, the disposal is a broader description than simply selling the land. There are a range of other options, and this is clearly suggesting that we are looking to one option only. We do have the director and also the manager of property in the room, so it might be worth seeking further clarification.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Would you mind, sorry, Luke, would you mind just coming forward just so that we can, thank you.
Yeah, I'm totally happy with that being changed to dispose. I think as the General Manager noted, I mean, I guess the intent is that we're selling it, but as you noted, who knows what random proposal could come to us, so rather than tie ourselves up with that, I suppose would be fine to replace that with.
Okay, and just while I have you there, recommendation 3 is authorise the General Manager to consider and acknowledge any objection received and report to a future council meeting. So we're authorising but not requiring, we're not directing. I know it's semantics, but it is important to get the actual specifics right. Is the intention to report to a future council meeting regardless?
Yeah.
Yes.
Because that's that final decision to actually sell the land. So at that point, we've gone through every one of the statutory and consultation processes. We bring it back to you to say, here's the outcome of that, and that's the actual final decision to dispose.
Okay.
Yeah, the Act requires the council to make that decision whether to dispose or not. So all we're simply doing at this stage is starting, if council agrees to the recommendation, starting the formal process of advertising it formally, and then we bring the results back to council for its decision.
Okay, thank you. So I might just ask if the mover, Deputy Mayor, would be happy if recommendation was 2 was changed to dispose rather than sell. And seconder, Alderman King, would you be happy with that?
Yeah.
Great, thank you for your cooperation.
Yeah, appreciate it.
So we might just note for the minutes that we're changing the word sell to dispose of. Yes, thank you. So that becomes the motion. Do we have any further discussion of the motion? No, I'll go back to the mover, Deputy Mayor, to close debate.
No, I'm satisfied with that. As I said before, it is frustrating. I think we approved on the 28th of March to start this process, so the delays are very much around the process, not the willingness of this council to help build housing where needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll put the motion to the vote. Please raise your hand if you're for. That's carried unanimously. Moving on to, thank you, Luke. Moving on to item 10, submission on the Regional Planning Framework discussion paper. And we have a recommendation that Council endorse the feedback provided in attachment 2 to this report on the Regional Planning Framework discussion paper, including the draft structure plan guidelines, November 2022, and approves the submission of the feedback contained in attachment 2 to this report to the State Planning Office. Do I have a mover for this item? Move, Deputy Mayor. Someone to second. Alderman King, Deputy Mayor, over to you.
This is another one of these very frustrating things that bureaucracy sometimes gets caught up. I remember the single-use planning scheme being a much heralded, important and significant piece of legislation, and I think it came in around 2018. Would that be right, General Manager?
I'm trying to think. We've got a little up there.
17, yes, I thought that was, yes, it was. So it started off in 2017. Was it actually legislated in 2017?
Through you, Mayor, my understanding is the Minister made or approved the state planning provisions at that time.
Yeah. So thank you. With my decade of local government experience, it was a very, very intense and painful and drawn out process with lots of input from every man and his dog. And why I find it so frustrating is that here we are in 2023 and it's still saying, this is, a piece of legislation, the lack of such a framework for the 3 RLUs, which is Regional Land Use Planning Schemes, and the inconsistency between them has resulted in difficulties with interpretation, inconsistency and ambiguity around maintenance review processes and responsibilities. How it's taken so long, bearing in mind that these this overlay actually affects major developers, small developers, mum and dad developers. It's incredible that it takes so long to simplify the process when it was all sold as a very simple one source, sort of fits all with just little discretions around the edges. But nevertheless, here we are, and I've read all the paperwork, and it just makes so much sense. Like, we've got to get on with it, and I do like the idea of structure plans, but some of these things are plans to make plans, and whatever, let's just move forward and get this done and dusted as soon as possible, because it is a big impediment to people trying to plan very large things for the future of Tasmania.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any further discussion? Alderman Dunsey.
Thank you. I'd like to commend the council officers who put this information together for us. They've also presented to us in a workshop which gave us a really good understanding of quite a complex matter. What has been put before us, I think, it has explained it as well as it can be put to us. We are laymen in this area and they're the experts, and I appreciate the effort that's gone into this. And I believe the recommendations that are before us are good ones for this project to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Dunsey. Any further discussion? No? I'll go back to the Deputy Mayor.
No, I think we've covered all of the appropriate parts of it.
I will put the motion. Please raise your hand if you're for. Carried unanimously. Moving on to item 11, Capital Works Status Report. Recommendation that Council receive and note the Capital Works Status Report to the end of January 2023 quarter, and note that $230,000 is being allocated to the Princess Wales Bay football pitches ground contamination remediation from savings and adjustments to the Capital Works program. Do I have someone to move as a motion? Alderman Cockshut, seconded Alderman King. Alderman Cockshut.
Thank you, Mayor. A very detailed report, and looks like we're around $7 million good if grant funding is allocated in time, which is great. A couple of projects and points I wanted to raise is the Gibbons Reserve play space. It's great to see the barricades have hit up this week, and that's a much loved play space which is well overdue for renewal, so it's good to see works commence on that project for that play space. Montrose Bay Foreshore Park, again, another great initiative for the council, and works due to commence in March, which is fantastic. And also the council solar panel, which is going to save approximately $25,000 per year, and obviously it's making us more sustainable and renewable. So commend the council for this, and it's a very detailed report, and look forward to seeing the remainder and all these projects listed come to life in the future.
Thank you, Alderman Cockshut. Alderman King.
Thank you, Mayor, through you, and concur with my fellow alderman's comments there, and congratulations to the director and his team in particular for the work they've done in this in-depth report, and I feel that we're in a good space and moving forward, so thank you for your work. Please pass that on to your team for their efforts.
Thank you, Alderman King. Any further discussion? Alderman Dunsey.
Just a question through you to the director, if I may. The Gibbons Reserve, it just talks about installation, play equipment, fencing, landscaping. Are the plans as they were for that to be the access-friendly park that was going to be? Have those plans changed at all? Is that still the intention of that particular area?
Through you, Mayor, the plan is to still have an accessible park, and there are some items that have changed due to availability, and some of them were coming from overseas. So, and there's can't remember the exact number, but there's about 3 items that have been substituted. There is a workshop coming to council to brief council on what has changed, but the theme is still for an accessible, all-inclusive park with barbecues, shelter, and all abilities, all ages that can use the park as well. So,
Thank you, appreciate that intent is still there.
Thank you, Alderman Dunsey. Thank you, Director. Any further discussion? Councillor Kendall.
Yeah, thanks. I guess just a comment and appreciation for the fact that we are installing solar panels on our council-owned buildings, and I think that's a pretty apt way to go. We know that we need to adapt to climate change, and just acknowledging all of the people that came in today that are all suffering, and also wanted to say that would have taken a huge amount of courage, and to thank you for coming in, and I feel your pain. It's something that we will have to adapt to as a council more and more in the coming decades. So yeah, I'm really happy that we're starting to make these changes, and I guess my question through you, Mayor, to Emilio would be, are there other council-owned buildings that we're looking to do sustainability measures on? I know a lot of councils are looking to retrofit their council-owned buildings as emergency shelters. And so reducing the impact and dependency on the grid is an important part of doing that. Yeah, so are there other council-owned buildings that have solar planned?
Through you, Mayor, we are looking at some of the other buildings that we have high daytime usage on, such as our work centre, childcare centres. We have had an assessment done on the work centre. There's probably a little bit more work required on some of our older buildings to get them up to spec to be able to install the solar panels. Just on this building alone, we had to do work on the roof, replace parts of the roof where the panels were going because some of it had shown signs of age. There were some leaking areas, and the switchboard itself is almost in its original state. That needed a major upgrade. So there are some works that we do need to do to be able to install solar panels, but they are things that we'll be working through progressively, building by building. So yes, I guess is the answer. We are looking at doing these sort of installs where possible. Not just on solar or power installations. We're looking at what we can do as far as energy saving through LED lighting, thermal installation, water heat, water savings. So wherever possible, we're looking at all types of energy savings.
Can I have a follow-up?
Yes,
question, Mayor?
yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely, yeah.
So sort of along that same theme, earlier today we went on a fantastic tour, and thanks to the council management for that, to look at some road replacement that's going on up in West Marina. And we were talking to the contractors who were talking about the way that council management are changing now to due to the lack of contractor availability as a result of COVID, and also looking to the Bridgewater Bridge redevelopment and noticing there's a lack of people on the ground and also supply shortages, that you're actively working that into your planning, and you're training up apprentices. And a lot of these projects, these council-run projects, are now being delivered, or it sort of looks like you're looking to mitigate those impacts through council management. Yeah, so my question is, just noticing that the Giblins Reserve Play Space we're delivering in-house, is that something that we're looking to do more?
Thank you.
Through you, Mayor, we actually did go to tender to try and get a contractor to deliver the whole project for a few reasons. We'd have a principal contractor looking after the whole site, which reduces your liability issues, reduces risk, puts the onus of supply and delivery all in one place. We found it difficult to be able to find available contractors at a good rate. So we decided to set upon looking at having a lot of individual standing tenders for all the components that make it up, and also having our own workforce do certain parts of it. And we've been able to put together a plan where we can deliver it in a pretty efficient manner, using our own workforce plus a number of different standing tenders, and we'll actually manage the whole project ourselves and provide the same result at a cheaper cost. We are looking at how we can look at our workforce planning and have succession planning in place. So we are looking at putting on trainees to train them up so that we can keep doing what we're doing into the future. And that's a program we'll continue to run. Things may change down the track. Who knows? There might be more skilled people available after the Bridgewater Bridge is finished, but we know at the moment that project is taking a lot of available labour for at least over a 4 to 5 year period. So we'll just have to keep working on our programs to deliver our own works as we see fit.
Thank you, Director. Anything further, Councillor Kendall?
No, that's it. Thanks.
Any further discussion of the item? All right, to reiterate Alderman Cocksharp's comments that it's great to see these projects, particularly the significant grant-funded projects underway. I know the community's been waiting and keen to see particularly the Giblin Reserve Play Space underway, so that's really exciting to see that started. And there are significant projects. We have significant capital works grant funded projects to undertake. It's a significant body of work, and I acknowledge the efforts of council staff in getting on with it so that we can get those delivered for the community. I also note that our expenditure of capital works, including the grant funded projects, is ahead of the year-to-date budget, which I think is probably first time for a long time that at this time of the year we've been ahead. And given the market conditions and labour shortages and cost escalations we've seen through COVID, I think that's worth noting. And again, congratulations to the Director and to the General Manager and the broader team on that achievement, because it's certainly putting us in a better place than we've been in terms of delivering on the ground for our community, footpaths, roads, infrastructure and services that our community tells us that are a priority for them. So very pleasing to note that at this time of the financial year. If there's nothing further, I'll go back to the mover, who was Alderman Cockshut, to close the debate.
Thank you, Mayor. I echo all my colleagues' sentiment, and one thing I will point out is the playground renewal program. Obviously, Collinsvale and Cardiff Reserve, Cardiff expect to be complete by April and Collinsvale by June this year, which is fantastic. And obviously, we discussed at an earlier council meeting about Benjafield Playground in Moona, another significant program for the municipality. It's one thing coming out of the election we did have a focus on is a play space in the area, so it's good to see we're putting a focus onto that moving forward for the next 40 years of the plan to renew them. So all in all, good stuff. Look forward to seeing the work begin and the end result further down the track.
Thank you, Alderman Cockshut. I'll put the motion to the vote. Please raise your hand if you're for. It's carried unanimously. Moving on to item 12, Glenorchy City Council Strategic Plan 2023 to 2032, draft for community engagement. And we have a recommendation that Council authorise the placement of the draft Glenorchy City Council Strategic Plan 2023 to 2032 on public exhibition from 28th February to 19th of March 2023. Do I have someone to move this as a motion? Alderman Yaxley, someone to second. Alderman Cockshut, well, you two are tying today. Alderman Yaxley.
You for today, what can I do?
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to say that there's been a serious amount of time and intense effort by our elected members in working the strategic plan, and I just want to commend them on doing that and the management team. So well done on bringing this together. And I guess our updated purpose, which we've proposed, is we are a welcoming council representing our community and providing services that make Glenorchy a better place every day. And it's a strong and encompassing statement. And our updating our values does see the changes of our values as they've sort of grown throughout time. So it's a really positive thing, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the community feedback regarding it.
Thank you, Alderman Yaxley. Alderman King.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, there's been a lot of work on it. There's 2 full day plus another half day workshops with most aldermen being available to participate. It's the most collegiate activity that I've been involved in since I've been on council, as far as working together as a group and the output. There's a lot of capable people on this council who've been able to put a lot into this, and the staff, etc. So I hope the community do participate in the feedback on this. Take the time, particularly you people here, take the time to read this and see what we've come up with, and realise that we want things to progress. So there's been, as I say, a lot of work done on this. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman King. Any further discussion? General Manager just wanted to make a note about a minor editing.
Thanks, Mayor. Just it came to our notice after we'd put the attachment out that we had a double up on one of our objectives, so we've just corrected that, and I've circulated that to Alderman. But we had a double up on we deliver services to meet our community's needs. So under the building image and pride community goal, we had that duplicated. We've just corrected that to be we nurture and celebrate our proud city with a strong sense of belonging, which is consistent with the discussion in the workshops. So just wanted to note that change from the version that was sitting in the attachments.
Thank you, General Manager. Councillor Kendall.
Yeah, just a point of clarification through you, Mayor, from the General Manager about the measures, because I know it's quite easy to get hooked on those measures because they're so tangible, and that makes it seem like the particular directions of each category might be heading in specific ways. But it's my understanding that the community feedback will provide actions that then more measures will be hooked onto as a result of that. So it's an active document at this point as people go home and read it and then feedback, and that their feedback will feed into the plan.
Through you, Mayor. Yes, that's right, Councillor Kendall. The measures of success that we have for each of the objectives and strategies are fairly draft. They're probably the least resolved part of the document, and we anticipate as officers doing some further work on that during the community engagement process, and we also welcome comments from members of the community as to whether those measures mean something to them, and we'll take that feedback and consider it carefully, and then bring a final version of the strategic plan back to council for consideration at the end of the engagement period.
Thank you, General Manager. Anything further, Councillor Kendall?
No, that's fine. So good opportunity for the community feedback, things that we haven't thought of.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Look, for the members of our public and those looking at their television screens or computer screens, it's very easy to judge a council as a collective and say, oh, what are they doing focusing on this? This doesn't look like much. But this is our commitment to our community, and it is just a headline document, if you like, but off that falls all of the strategies that we expect the staff to be able to deliver. So it's very easy to look at us tonight and say, well, everyone's agreeing, it's just all group think. And I can assure you it's not. I'd like to say that normally I'd have my computer, but I was out of range for the weekend. This is only a fraction of the reading and the reports and the financials and the some of the investigations that go on to any one of these documents that you'll see appear onto our council agenda, which admittedly is a fairly light one tonight. But so every business or every organisation will have a plan and set out what its values are and its mission statement, etc. Ours needed updating and is more reflective, I believe, of the contemporary views that are held by this current new council. And so if you could look at this and say, well, I'd like to contribute to it. I'd like you to have a look at it and read it and give us your opinion, because it is so difficult for this council to get community engagement. We get it when people are angry or the rubbish bin hasn't been emptied and things like that, and very serious issues, including the flooding, which we really appreciate you coming and giving your own time to explain it to us. But there's a lot of things that go on that a council does, and it tries to impact on so many people's lives. And so this subject that we're discussing now just looks like a few light-hearted statements, motherhood statements even, if you want. But they are actually very significant, and each of the words were debated very, very carefully with input from everyone around this council to make sure it was a guiding document going forward, so that we modernise this council and become much more efficient, and we're much more reflective of the wishes of our citizens and residents. So I think it's more by way of explanation. So a lot of work's gone in. I really want to thank the officers for their work, and also all of my colleagues. And I just hope and pray that you can spread the good news to everyone you've ever met and ask them to engage with this and give us your opinion, because it's a document that hangs around for 4 years. So we really, really want to know what you want. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any further discussion? Councillor Quick.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to express my thanks to the consultant that ran the couple of days workshops, and the positive collegiality shown by not only the councillors but staff who were involved in the process. And like Alderman Kendall, I look forward to the finished product, and like the Deputy Mayor says, we need thousands of Glenorchy ratepayers to look at this document, because it's our future for the next 10 years. and unless they get involved, it's just the 10 of us plus the staff making decisions for 60 or 70,000 ratepayers in Glenorchy. So I see it as a real positive, but it's only a part way to the finished product.
Thank you, Councillor Quick. Alderman Cockshott.
Thank you, Mayor. I echo Councillor Quick's comments and my fellow colleagues. I just want to say thanks very much. I think it was a great couple of workshops, and as a new alderman to the council coming in a fresh set of eyes and haven't been on the council before, it was great to work with a bunch of people who had different ideas, but we could all work it through as a team, and particularly with the staff and how we all collaborated together to bring it to life. I thought it was a really good, positive learning experience, and it really sets us up for the next 4 years. So thank you very much to everyone. I thought everyone's input was really great to the process.
Thank you, Alderman Cockshott. Any further discussion? No, I can only agree with my fellow alderman in that it was a really collegiate process. We didn't all necessarily agree on things, but I think we all seem to have a shared understanding of what is most important to our community, and that's really what we're trying to represent through the development of the objectives that you see in this strategic plan. We are here to be the voice for the people of Glenorchy, and we do our absolute best to try and gauge a sense of opinion and what's important to people. We can do that to some extent, but we also need the help of the community to make sure we're getting that representation right in being your voice. Again, people in the community will have different views. It's our role to try and balance that to deliver the best programs and services that we can as a council across the 50-odd range of services that we provide. So it has been a rewarding experience for us as a new council to come together and put our ideas on the table and what do we want to focus on, and certainly community, having a neat, tidy community, welcoming community has come through as a really strong priority, as has community safety and better engaging with our community and communicating with our community, as well as delivering, really getting right those core services that we deliver as a council. You know, roads, footpaths, those core services that we deliver to make Glenorchy a better place every day. So I'm hopeful, very hopeful that we will get better engagement from the community on our strategic plan than we do on many other things that we put out for community feedback. I can't say I'm getting my hopes up too high, sadly, but I know people are busy, but this is important. This is us setting the direction. This will inform for us as a council term over the next 4 years. This will inform how we develop our annual budget and what we determine as priority projects for the next 4 years as your elected members. So it is important that we get the broad direction right, even though it can sound like broad motherhood statements, as the Deputy Mayor said. It's important that we get this direction right because it provides us with the foundation for what we determine are the priorities each year, how we're going to spend your money as the ratepayers of Glenorchy. So really important document. It's really important that we as a council have ownership over it, and that's really being generated through this process, and that we are on the same page as staff at all levels across the organisation in having ownership of this strategic plan and this direction. It has to filter down through every level of the organisation. We've all got to own it. So looking forward to the next steps, and that it is closing public consultation on the 19th of March because we need to have this finalised in order to develop our budget for the next financial year. So it's been a lot of work for us to do. It's early on in our term, and I really appreciate everyone's commitment around the table and in the staff to getting to this point so early in our term. I'll go back to the mover if there's nothing further. Who was Alderman Yaxley?
Thank you, Mayor. Concur with everyone who's contributed to the discussion, and if you haven't got the message, we want your feedback. So 19th of March, so please, we want to hear your feedback. We want to make it as good as we possibly can be. So.
Thank you. I will put the motion to the vote. Please raise your hand if you're for. That's carried unanimously. Moving on to item 13, Future of Local Government Review Options Paper. We have a recommendation that Council make a submission to the Local Government Board about the Future of Local Government Review Options Paper Review Stage 2, December 2022, in the terms set out under the heading Submission in this report, and write to both the Local Government Board and Minister for Local Government, expressing Council's openness to continue to actively engage with the Future of Local Government Review process beyond this submission. Do I have a mover? Alderman Dunsby, someone to second. Deputy Mayor, Alderman Dunsby.
Thank you. Thank you, General Manager, for bringing the matter to us and then for listening for our input and crafting some of those answers around that input. I think that was really important we did that. You've also negotiated for this report to go through because it is a bit outside the deadline. So again, giving us the opportunity to discuss it here at Council and in our workshop was really useful. I participated in one of the online sessions and there was a really interesting comment that was there. It said when things were put together in 1993, the thoughts were that that was around the ratepayer. And we see things now and it's very much around much more than the ratepayers and how the views and everything have changed and how the legislation sits now just doesn't meet a contemporary council. We've seen that in our discussions. Some of the issues that are put before us there are rather vague and I think they've been deliberately so. The discussion in the group again was a bit similar again, why it's A, B or A and B really, but I think that is to keep things open for the discussions to continue through to the next stage. So I believe it's really important that we do have this input. I believe this submission has captured the feeling around the table and of management as well. And I look forward to the report going forward and the process going forward as well.
Thank you, Alderman Dunsby. Any further discussion? Deputy Mayor?
Well, I've been a long advocate for reform and a long and loud advocate for reform. Before 1993, I think Esperance had its own council and, you can imagine how viable that would be today. We are well past having tiny communities with a little pot of money doing a few little roads. We are now we need to have upgraded IT facilities. We need to have a lot more money to do just about everything. Most of the councils are really struggling to deliver the core necessities of their duties, let alone anything that might be nice to have. So I also think that I was in a situation where I still do live in Rosetta, and I was the Lord Mayor of Hobart. And as soon as you crossed Creek Road, you knew you were in another country. The standards of services we got in Hobart, because it had a different rate base, it had a bigger business population, and it was a capital city, were significantly more than were available in Glenorchy. Having said that, my love of Glenorchy made me stay here and put up with only one rubbish bin removal or pay the extra as I do to get it removed on the second week. So I believe the review is timely. In fact, it's well overdue. It's absolutely overdue. Minister Gutwin, as he was back then, came out and told us about the ageing population and the big wall we were going to hit with all these councils becoming very, very vulnerable. So, I mean, some councils, I think, have only got like 600 something ratepayers. That is not a viable council. You just can't do anything. So some amalgamation of services. I don't think any councils have really successfully achieved that. The General Manager might know more, but, it's just ridiculous that Council A has a big fleet of trucks to do roads and Council B next door has to call in contractors or something to that effect. And who mows lawns and who doesn't mow lawns and who puts the white lines on the sports ground and who has to call in other people. So this is the government showing more traction than I've ever seen. It's trying to do it in a consultative way. I think the public have come on board a lot more, and certainly anyone who wants to develop or put their money into any development need these issues that have been underlined for ages to be resolved. So what we have to have is going forward strong, sustainable councils that can deliver services that are equitable for most people in Tasmania. So you don't have the second-class councils and, people not getting services that they need. So it's very, very intense. It's been going on for months and months and months. It's another one of these documents. And when you see us all put our hands up and approve it, probably at the end of this, I'm guessing, it is because we have gone through it on numerous occasions and we have had feedback and meetings with the General Manager to nut it out and to come up with things that we think might be problems and suggestions. But at the end of the day, I think we have to now start thinking of, well, I'll give you a classic example. Glenorchy City Council is about to spend millions on having a new IT service, and it needs to because the current system is completely not fit for purpose and it's so difficult for staff. They're doing paper runs and all sorts of things around it to make it try and work and get Part B to talk to Part A. So at the same time, Hobart's gone and built a brand new shiny IT thing. Clarence has been working on theirs, and probably Kingra's got one in the boil as well. So instead of just one council doing it for 4 councils and running payroll for everybody and more efficiencies of that nature, we could probably have more staff dedicated to actually fixing the roads. So it's not necessarily about losing staff, it's about redirection of our core services. And so this document also talks about like a Service Tasmania model where you can go anywhere and pay your rates instead of having, if you're not computer savvy, you might feel like you have to come into this council, but you could go and pay your electric bill, your Tas Water, everything else. There is a reflection in the document that has a go about Tas Water. I'm on a very different page to the General Manager, who was quite traumatised by Glenorchy losing its water infrastructure. I, from the Hobart City Council, thought it was the best idea ever, and I lived in Glenorchy, because it's not always a loss. We get better infrastructure. At that time, we had something like 50-odd sewage systems in southern Tasmania, and only one was compliant, and that was in Cygnet. Was that right, General Manager? It was a brand new little one down at Cygnet. The director's agreeing with me. So that is totally unacceptable in a state that claims to be clean, green and healthy. So as far as I'm concerned, a potential loss for Glenorchy, which did see it struggle, it was also compensated on the other side because of loss of infrastructure. But it was a good outcome for the people of Tasmania. So I think we have to just view this with an open mind, be very open to change and look at it as Tasmanians instead of, I live in Moona, so I've only got to worry about Moona's problems. I ain't got to worry about Glenorchy. We've got to worry about the whole municipality and probably the whole of southern Tasmania so we can spread the assets equitably. End of speech.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any further discussion? Alderman Slade.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Some comments I make will be following along very much that the Deputy Mayor said, but I was here in 1991 and there was 47 councils in Tasmania, totally unworkable, really. So it came down to 29 and what I like about this review is the fact is that there's a real willingness of having an appetite for change from the point of view of council, change from the point of view of our community, and government want to do something as well. So I think that's important. 93, there wasn't a great appetite for it. Certainly again in the late 90s, there wasn't a great appetite. It was too much about, what's going to happen to me as a council, right through to, are we going to lose this, or are we going to gain this? Is that going to be detrimental, whatever? I think the big picture in this is very clear. What's the best for our communities? What is the best for our staff? And at the end of the day, what is the best in relation to going forward for sustainability for as an organisation? I think what we've done here at this stage here, it's early days, but I think it's good that the government's leading the charge, and it's going to take all levels to make this work. And it's not just us that does, I suppose, overlay things. It's the state government and all their departments. They have their IT sections separate too. So they've got a lot of work to do, so it's not just us. But the point of view is that this is a starting board, and it's really nice to see in 30 years the appetite to change things to make sure they're more sustainable and more cost effective in service delivery to you guys. That's it.
Thank you, Alderman Slade. Any further discussion? Alderman Culture.
Thanks, Mayor. I agree with both Alderman's comments, and I must say I wasn't around in 93 or 91. I arrived in 1996, so I'm a bit late to the party, so I have to apologise about that. One thing which does resonate with me, though, is the point two. It's literally just showing our openness to engage the process of the local government reform and what opens everything's on the table, us as a council. So I think it is time to have these serious debates and what the council's going to look like in 5, 10, 20 years to be sustainable, because the reality is 29 councils isn't going to be sustainable moving forward. So how do we work with that and come as a whole state together to get the best bang for buck as ratepayers, and also the efficiencies in our systems to deliver the core services for the people, and that's what we should be thinking of. So, yeah.
Thank you, Alderman Coxer. Any further discussion? Councillor Quick.
Thank you. I'm a bit of a cynic when it comes to the role of state governments and this options paper. For goodness sake, we've got 560,000 people in the state. Western suburbs of Sydney and Melbourne, the Greater Brisbane Council have more people. It worries me that we're not going to really make a scrap of difference unless the government is really persuaded to radically change the whole structure of local government in Tasmania. I appreciate what the Deputy Mayor said, but I think we need a benevolent dictator to really make some hard decisions, because, I mean, for goodness sake, 560,000 people and 29 councils is absolutely ludicrous in 2023. So I really hope that the options paper comes up with something really radical. We talk about radical moves in AFL football and spending $1 billion. We could spend a lot less restructuring Tasmania and providing far better services, as we've got an ageing population, problems in our health system and also our education and NDIS. So for goodness sake, let's hope this is a turning point.
Thank you, Councillor Quick. Any further discussion? I'm grateful for my fellow aldermen and councillors' engagement in this process and in this debate this afternoon. Local government reform is overdue, as the Deputy Mayor has noted, and I agree with Councillor Quick that we need decisive leadership from the state government in this decision. If we come to consult with communities on changing boundaries and the A word, it will never happen. It's going to take really decisive leadership from the state government. So I'm supportive of what we're putting, whilst we're not putting forward a specific view around that in this paper, and I like to emphasise that. We are raising some questions for the board to consider in formulating their view to put recommendations to the state government. But I do note that the board considers there is broad agreement from the sector that the status quo is not an optimal or sustainable model for the sector as a whole. So there is broad agreement across this local government sector in Tasmania, across communities, that we can't just keep doing what we've been doing. We need a contemporary structure and governance model for local government going forward if it's to survive into the future, given some of the challenges that we face. Some form of consolidation is necessary, so it's the scale and extent of that consolidation that is really up for the board to now consider based on the feedback provided through this stage of consultation, and to make recommendations to the government on, and then it will be up to the government to take decisive decisions, to be decisive in taking action going forward and working to implement it also in a effective and time critical manner. So I look forward to the next steps and to continuing to engage in whatever the board comes back with in terms of going forward. And I know the other thing, one thing is about sustainability, and that's a really important part of the review, but the other thing is about being clear on council's role, because there has certainly been scope creep over the years in what councils do, and the board paper notes that it's changed from being services to property has been the focus of councils in the past, to now moving much more into the services to people. realm, and that focus of community wellbeing and economic development and jobs and some of these other services that we've seen councils evolve to provide in response to gaps, to fill the gaps. Government of the gaps is also a term that's used to describe some of the roles that we fill and that aren't necessarily appropriately funded to fulfil on a sustainable basis. So clarifying the role of councils, particularly in that community wellbeing space, is really important. And then also what is the role of other providers, other levels of government and community providers in that space is critical, and I really hope the review nuts that out and gets that right. So really supportive of the paper that we're putting forward, and thank, as other elected members have, the General Manager for putting together this submission and hearing our feedback. It is a comprehensive submission and a comprehensive analysis of the positions put forward by the board, and I look forward to hearing the outcomes as we go forward. Any further discussion? We'll go back to the mover, Alderman Dunsby, to close debate.
Thank you. As has been reflected around the table, there were lots of input into this report, and it's been reflected. It was interesting at the state level listening to the conversations that people having there and hearing some examples of shared services, for instance, where sharing significant directors and things like that are happening in some of the other councils already, that there are councils out there already being proactive in that space. And that's been noted by the review board as well. So lots of examples there. We'll hear many more to come, and I commend our report going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Dunsby. I'll put the motion to the vote. Please raise your hand if you're for. It's carried unanimously. Item 14, Quarterly Report, Q2 2022-23. We have a recommendation that Council receive and note Council's Quarterly Report and Quarterly Annual Plan Progress Report for the quarter ending 31st of December 2022. Do I have someone to move as a motion? Alderman Dunsby, come under second. Alderman Slade. Thank you, Alderman Dunsby.
Thank you. We've before us a very comprehensive report. The core report, there's a lot of work goes into that. It is a good read for anybody, not just for we sitting around the table. If you really want to see what's happening within the council and the council area, it is definitely a document that I encourage you to read. It has developed over the years and is now quite easy to read as well. I think you would easily understand the information that is in there. There's no material risks in adopting this report. It's a comprehensive report. I'll throw it open to my colleagues for any further comments.
Thank you, Alderman Dunsby. Any further discussion or questions? No. I too note that it is indeed a comprehensive report, and there's a lot of effort that goes into preparing it for our consideration, but also for the community's information as well. We talked before about some of the progress towards some of the major capital works and grant-funded projects that we have on the go, and that too is captured in the quarterly report to inform us of progress as well. And I know we are working on better mechanisms to inform the community through our communication channels of that progress as well, and I appreciate the efforts on that. We are sitting quite well financially, as is noted in the quarterly report, tracking okay against budget, or well against budgeted figures. So I too recommend and implore my colleagues to support this and promote it through your networks as well, so that we can better inform the community about what's going on. Any further discussion? Go back to the mover, Alderman Dunsby.
Nothing further, thank you, Mayor.
I'll put the motion to the vote. Please raise your hand if you're for. It's carried unanimously. Item 15, delegations to the Public Places and Infrastructure Bylaw 2022, and we have 4 recommendations there before us. They are quite lengthy and with legal jargon, so I won't read them out. We all can see them on the screen and before us in our agenda. Do I have someone to move this? Deputy Mayor, someone to second. Councillor Kendall, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I think it's a very straightforward document, Mayor. These things have to be done by law. We have to have delegations. We have to authorise the delegations, and there's a process of authorising the delegation for the next delegation. So it might sound a little complex at times, but at least you know that we're all across governance. We're sticklers for making sure that we're obeying the rules and doing it correctly. So I just pass it around for anyone else who wishes to make comment.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any further discussion? No, I agree. This is fairly straightforward process to delegate the power to the General Manager to be able to enforce our powers and obligations under the bylaws, under the Public Places and Infrastructure bylaw. It was quite a lengthy process to develop the bylaw, so it's somewhat pleasing to get to this point where we are actually able to regulate through delegation to the General Manager some of these issues we see in our municipality, and I'm very happy to support the recommendation. Any further discussion? Go back to the mover, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, and for those of you who don't have an agenda in front of you, this one's dealing with activities in public spaces, including busking, organising of public events involving public speakers, so noise control, camping in restricted areas, and that's a real issue at the moment with the state of homelessness, accessing restricted areas of parks, possessing dangerous items such as hunting equipment in parks, and obstructing water in riparian area, interfering with the road or park, such as obstructing for an event, and roadside vending. So they are very important laws, and we have to be able to authorise our officers to be able to have the power to tell you off if you get caught doing any of those things.
We don't want to be the policeman.
No. Saves us doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Put the motion. Please raise your hand if you're for. Carried unanimously. Item 16, Financial Performance Report, 31st of January 2023. We have recommendation that Council receive and note Financial Performance Report for year to date ending 31st of January 2023 as set out in Attachment 1. Do I have a mover? Alderman Dunsby. Seconder? Alderman Cockshut. Alderman Dunsby.
Thank you. The report is fairly straightforward and indicates our financial situation at the 31st of January. We obviously have the comprehensive report of the quarterly one. This is the monthly one we receive, and I'm happy with all the figures as reflected in there. I don't have any questions, so I'll open to the floor.
Thank you, Alderman Dunsby. Any further discussion? No?
Probably just a comment, it's so nice to have an audience. So even though you may have come in a little bit stroppy with us and you have very genuine reason to be upset, it is lovely to have people staying the distance you have to listen and show interest in what we do here at this council. So please, come anytime you like, and anyone on television, you're welcome in person as well. It's really good to be able to share the work that we do with real people. So I think that's the important thing. This is an important document. We have to review it by law, but it's also vital that each of us aldermen stay on top of how much money we have or haven't got for various projects. So I can assure you that this is a very diligent council, and we have all done our due diligence on it before we just stick our hands up.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Back to you, Alderman Dunsby, please.
Nothing further.
I'll put the motion to the vote. Please raise your hand if you're for. Unanimously. Item 17, notices of motion, questions on notice. We have a question on notice, perhaps, from Alderman Dunsby from the last council meeting in relation to seeking a review of the timing of the announcement of the Citizen and Young Citizen of the Year plus event, plus supporting categories be implemented with an intent to return them to January, with the rationale in question, and then the answer being provided. Oh, you haven't received the answer?
No.
Oh, I do apologise. An answer has been prepared. Has been prepared. I have seen an answer, so we might just...
Manager, I'll go and source that now. I thought that was with you, so it has been prepared.
It has been prepared, yes, I've certainly seen it.
Run quickly, David.
My apologies, Alderman Dunsby and my fellow elected members. We will seek the answer to that one and share it as with us here, and also for the minutes of this council meeting.
So Mayor, would you like me to move a motion that we address Alderman Yaxley's question first? Or we wait?
Oh, that's okay. I think we can just go. We don't need a motion for that. We can come back to that. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
We can go to Alderman Yaxley's question on notice, which was received on the 20th of February 2023, and there is a background there provided with the questions and answers to those questions provided there. But I guess I give Alderman Yaxley the opportunity if he would like to speak to those or ask those questions and any follow-up questions you may have, Alderman Yaxley.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't go into it too much. I think I'll try to explain it as well as I could within the notice and the background information. I guess my last paragraph, which I've written, is as a community and a council, we strive to build image and pride and value in our environment, which I believe is critical to enforce not only for all of us as councillors, for our residents, but also for big businesses, that they take those community goals seriously, and to show pride in our city and suburbs. And they contribute to this community, and so they need to contribute to the goals of the community. And having these shopping trolleys scattered undermines these goals and objectives, which I believe is unacceptable. So I guess my questions were trying to find a solution in just to try and dig a little bit to try and find out how we can resolve the issue, whether we can further provide incentive in terms of fines rather than a fee in terms of a release. And I guess what I'm looking forward to is having a discussion around the table, getting community feedback as well in terms of how we can actually resolve it, because I think it's an ugly thing, and I think we've spent a lot of money on our beautiful CBD and we've got trolleys scattered around everywhere. So it's just been something that I've had feedback from the community and from myself.
Yes, thank you. Alderman Yaxley, as you note, in your background to your question there, and as per the discussion we've had, this is something I raised with those businesses back in around August last year after similar frustrations and quite a few complaints from community members about shopping trolleys scattered all around the place. So we put them on notice and asked them to clean up their act, if you like, and then when that didn't really happen, we wrote to them and said, if you don't start, well, we are from 5th of September going to start impounding the trolleys and charging a release fee. As the Director has said, that we haven't necessarily had too much success with that. It still does remain an issue and we're still working through that with those businesses, but happy to workshop it, as the Director has said, with Council.
Mayor, I wouldn't normally name and shame a business, but this is in open council and it's very clearly documented. The Coles indicated that this is about the cost of their trolley, so this is the $100 a fine if they leave trolleys out. Therefore, they would not pay the fee and allow them to be disposed of, resulting in an unrecoverable cost to the council. But it's not just that, it's the economic vandalism and waste. Imagine taking a trolley up to the tip and just plonking it into landfill. It's a disgraceful attitude, and I think they really need to revisit their actions on sustainability, waste, recycling, goodness knows what else. But these trolleys are everywhere. They're in creeks, they're in other people's shopping centres, they're on the fronts of houses, they're out on the street. I do think that it's just a cost of business for them and that they should lift their game. Woolworths, on the other hand, are definitely considering the options and will get back to us. So,
thank you, Deputy Mayor. So, did you have a subsequent question without notice, or you just
Just,
workshop that? Because we will have the opportunity to workshop this. So, so I just wanted to provide the opportunity for Alderman Yaxley to ask any follow-up questions you may have to the Director, if possible. But it sounds like it's covered and you are satisfied.
As long as it's something we can workshop and discuss.
Yeah, thank you.
Mayor, if I may,
Sure.
just to add, when this was first raised, we did actually start to collect some trolleys to show that we were, I guess, serious about the whole ban or trolleys being left in our streets. And it did spark a reaction and a conversation with both Woolworths, who use a third party who represent Big W, and Woolworths, and directly with Coles. And so they did actually give commitments. They told us they were in the middle of swapping over their contractors. We did notice a considerable change in their performance in cleaning up the trolleys. So we did ease off the collection ourselves. And it lasted for a while, but it has slipped back a little bit. But in contacting Coles, they did have a couple other issues. Their geo-fence that locks the wheels was out of action for a while because there was work happening in the car park. They gave a commitment that once that was back up and running, that they would control the trolleys. And Woolworths said they would do more regular collections. I think both have sort of slid back slightly too. So there is an opportunity to start the collections. As noted, there is a cost to that, but if we can strike a balance, we should be able to recover that cost. So there should be no cost to council and the community, and hopefully we could see an improvement. But I guess we need to work out what is a balance and a fair and equitable process to give everyone that opportunity to remove their own trolleys. Hence the reason we're having to workshop that and directly communicate with the supermarkets to get their feedback.
Thank you, Director. Okay, moving on, back to question from Alderman Dunsby from the last council meeting. The answer has been provided there. Alderman Dunsby, just wonder if you have any follow-up questions to that. Now you have the chance to briefly read it.
Thank you. Just again, it has been to briefly read it, but I do appreciate that there will be a review of the awards after we have our events in May, and the review will include the timing of the awards and a recommendation regarding whether the community and volunteer component should remain combined or return to separate events. It should also be noted that under Regulation 18, a decision can be overturned in whole or part, but must be passed by an absolute majority. So there's certainly some opportunities there following workshops and this year's events for consideration of the people sitting around this table now to take that decision forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Dunsby. Any further questions without notice in open council this afternoon? Alderman Cockshott.
Yeah, question about notice. Apologies, I'm just thinking about over the last couple of days. We've seen an increase, I'm going to say, on antisocial behaviour, particularly in the CBD with youth. I know we have written to Tas Police and the Minister responsible about helping out with this sort of issue, and obviously we've invested our own council funds into security guards outside the council chambers. I just noted on social media a lot over the last few weeks. I think there has been an uptake in this, so whether it's throwing cans under cars or youths carrying knives or pushing elderly people. I would just like to raise, if we could write to Tas Police, whoever it is, as an update on what they're doing as per our last conversation and where that's at, and have they seen an increase or what is the outcome of that? I think it's pretty important to the community and we want to create a safe environment for our people. So I just want to acknowledge that we have heard concerns recently and we do take it very important when you do come into Glenorchy, you want to have a safe space.
Thank you, Alderman Cockshott. I guess, as you know, we have written to the Police Commissioner and we have written to the Premier, and we have, in response, we have the opportunity to have a direct discussion with Inspector John Ward from Glenorchy Police next Monday, I believe it is, at our workshop next Monday. He's coming along. So I guess I ask, does that satisfy that for now? Let's have the conversation with Inspector Ward to see where we go from there. And we also have the opportunity to meet with the Premier on the 31st of March to discuss his response to our latest correspondence as well. So perhaps if we can hold off writing, but note that we have those opportunities to further discuss this matter. We did also receive some pleasing feedback last week from Inspector Ward and the PCYC, who we've engaged to help us with these issues, providing us with an example of a recent diversion of a potentially really awful situation that could have ensued on council lawns where they had inside information, if you like, and were able to prevent what could have been a rather nasty incident. So it's an example to suggest that, you know, the systems and the relationships that are being developed around some of the initiatives that we're funding are working and are making a difference, whilst we note that the behaviour still is a problem. You know, it takes time for these systems and processes and programs to work, but hopefully we'll start to see some of that change having a bigger impact soon. But yes, we still need to have those ongoing conversations with both police and the government. Mr. Ronson, you would like to address council on this matter?
Mayor, I just might add through you, if that's okay. Members of the public might be interested, and elected members might be interested. The Tas Police website is also their Facebook site, and their website is starting to report on their activities across the whole of Hobart. So it'd be a good idea to like the Tas Police Facebook site. and they're reporting at a level of detail they haven't reported previously to address that issue.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Good point. Any further questions without notice this afternoon? No. There being none, then I will seek for someone to move that we go to closed council at 5:15 PM. Moved Alderman Slade, someone to second. Alderman King. Then that ends the open part of our council meeting. Thank you to members of the public who have attended this afternoon and stayed the course with us, as the Deputy Mayor mentioned. We appreciate your attendance. Thank you to members of the public who have joined us online, and we will be back again on the last Monday of March at 3:30 PM for our March council meeting. We believe it's March already. Oh, sorry, I didn't put that motion. Thank you. Procedural, very important. So move that we go to closed council, moved Alderman Slade, seconded Alderman King. I'll put the motion that we go to closed. That's carried unanimously at 5:15 PM.
Come again, but this was a short one, so.
You're welcome to come and ask questions anytime, and you don't have to stay the course, by the way, if you do need to come and ask questions. But we appreciate you doing so.